Good morning. I'd like to introduce you to two old friends of mine from the world of cartoons. They are Pinky and the Brain. Produced by Steven Spielberg, the cartoon series Pinky the Brain ran for some 66 episodes back beginning in 1993. Pinky and the Brain were genetically enhanced laboratory mice who resided in a cage in the Acme Labs research facility. Brain, the shorter of the two, was self-centered and a scheming little mouse, while Pinky was good-natured but not very bright at the same time. In each episode, Brain devised a new plan to take over the world, which ultimately ended in failure, usually due to Pinky's foolishness and the impossibility of Brain's original plan. While Brain's plans were always hair-raising and Pinky's actions always bizarre, I could just not wait each week for the closing scene of each episode. Pinky and the Brain would stand side by side, usually all singed after some explosion or covered in dust. And Pinky would say excitedly to the Brain, "So what will we do tomorrow, Brain?" To which the Brain, dear love, would always reply, "The same thing we do every day, Pinky. Try to take over the world." The same thing we do every day, Pinky. Try to take over the world. Don't you admire the Brain's resilience, his determination, his single-mindedness, his attitude of get up and go in the face of continual setback, usually caused by his partner, Pinky? I was reminded of Pinky the Brain and this closing scene as I read the passage for our reflection this morning from the book of Philippians. It comes in chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. And Paul says to the Christians at Philippi, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you've always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose." That therefore in verse 12 is because of Jesus' example of servant living in the previous verses. In the light of that, therefore, Paul says to Christians, to fellow believers at Philippi, you should simply keep on doing what you've done from the beginning. Why does he say this? I think because for over time we all get weary and get defocused. How many weeks are we into this self-imposed lockdown now? I'm not even sure. Certainly the novelty of staying at home, of working from home, of no sport, no social interaction has worn off. No meeting either as a Christian community. I mean, no real togetherness as Christians, not just virtually, though virtually is as good as it gets for now. The COVID-19 virus pandemic is hazardous to my spiritual well-being. I'm locked out of community big time. My intimacy with Jesus can suffer at such times. The expectancy as I read the scriptures can wane. The joy of sitting and communing with my God in prayer can become, less easy. It's here that my thoughts fell smilingly on the Brain, on his resilience, his determination, his single-mindedness, his attitude of get up and go in the face of continual setback. And while the Brain was living by his own wit and determination, not so us. Continue to work out your salvation this day with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. God himself is willing you and me on this day to journey with him, to not give up. Join him this day on the journey with determination, with single-mindedness, with an attitude of get up and go in the face of continual sameness.